Good day, everyone. Now, I presume a majority of you, apart from two that I see there, you're all in the UK. So you're enjoying your sort of warm summer, and we're just getting over the cold and the snow that came through a couple of days ago. So, so yeah, it's been a pretty cold couple of days. Okay, just a little introduction. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, but I'm based in Orange. It's a town about 3.5 hours west of Sydney. We're pretty high up, and as I just briefly mentioned, we do get snow. We've had some lovely snow the last couple of days. My PhD basically focuses on the astronomy of the Wiradjuri people, and I'll when I call up the presentation, I'll show you exactly where I'm working, what area of Australia I'm working on. So let me just share screen. Just hope this all works again. Let's see how we go. Are we able to see that? That thumbs up. Thanks, Gary. Yep, excellent. Okay. So I thought what I'd do for this presentation is just look at one aspect of Aboriginal astronomy and how certain indicator stars, the bright stars, can be used to indicate the life cycles of terrestrial animals, how the rising and the setting of certain stars can inform Aboriginal peoples as to what's happening on the ground on Earth. So here's my brief outline for today. Hopefully I've got my clock ticking along, so I'm going to try and keep to my hour allotted. See how we go. So I'm just going to do a basic introduction to our research group. There are two members here who have joined us tonight. So there's Bob Fuller down there. Oh, sorry. There's another one off to the side here. My wife's here too. She's also a member of the group. So there's Bob Fuller, Carla Getch, and my wife Trevor Leaman off to the side here. We're all cultural astronomers. We work through the Australian Indigenous Astronomy team. So I'll just give you a brief little introduction to that. Then I'll do a quick overview of cultural astronomy in case you're not familiar with the topic. I'm going to quickly show you an Aboriginal language map just to show you all the different regions of Australia, and just to show you how many language groups there are in the country, and the fact that each one of those can have a different astronomy. So when we do a cultural astronomy here in Australia, we have to actually specify which language group we're talking about. Then the main part of the presentation is going through some of the resource calendars. Only a select few, just some chosen ones that are quite well known. If I tried to fit in any more, we would be here all night or all day in your case. And right at the end, I'm going to go and show you a few Aboriginal night skies using stellarium. One I'm working on specifically with Wiradjuri astronomy, one that Bob Fuller there worked on as part of his masters on Gamilaroi Yalyaye astronomy, and one other, which is the Boron Woodlire night sky. So moving right on. So here's the team, or part of the team. Not everyone's here. We've had a few new ones sort of join the team lately, so I don't have updates for them. So the ones on the left and right, we've got Aboriginal astrophysicists. Some have graduated, some are still working through their courses. The ones in the middle are other members of the research group. There's Bob and Carla there, of course, myself, and Dr. Dwayne Hamaka, who is our team leader. And a few other faces, including my wife at the right there. One of the Aboriginal elders that has come along to some of our field trips. And our group, very importantly, liaises with many Aboriginal elders from different language groups. These are a few of them. We do have more that aren't included in this lineup, but these are the some of the main players that helped us over the last few years with our research projects, and also their own, they do their own research as well, and they're all published authors. And the website that we have, we're trying to make it like a one-stop shop for anyone who's interested in learning a bit more about Aboriginal astronomy. So one part of our website highlights the research. So we've got the papers and theses, books, etc. So worth visiting. And then, of course, another part of the website is the school student teacher resources that we have, and more information on how you can become a cultural astronomer, etc. And also places where they do have a cultural astronomy content, such as some of the planetaria in Australia and observatories as well. So that's just a very quick overview of our group. Please check out the website there, and we're also on Facebook, very important. So if you want to know more about what we do, that's the place to go. So it's easy to remember. Just put Australian Indigenous Astronomy or Australian Aboriginal Astronomy into the search engine, and you'll find us. Okay, so cultural astronomy. What is cultural astronomy? Here's a couple of definitions by a couple of other cultural astronomers. Nicholas Camion works out at University of Wales, and Jarita Holbrook is based in the University of Cape Town, South Africa. But basically, in a nutshell, if you look at those definitions, cultural astronomy is the study and the appreciation of how the night sky informs people, how the skies were used by different cultures. So a very broad definition, but we do break the discipline down into four main areas. So archaeastronomy, you're probably familiar with archaeastronomy, especially in the UK and Europe, where it's more prevalent, looking at the astronomy of past cultures and the astronomical alignments of ancient monuments. Ethnoastronomy, so it's the astronomy of living cultures, very important for basically what we call New World cultural astronomy as opposed to Old World cultural astronomy. Then we got historical astronomy. So that's analysing the astronomical observation and data in historical records. And then we've got another one which sounds the same, but it's quite a slightly different focus, and that's the history of astronomy. And that's basically the studying the evolution of astronomical knowledge over time. There is a fifth one, I haven't put it in the slide, or probably I'll just mention it briefly. There is another discipline called the history of astrology. Now, you might think it's a bit strange that astronomers are interested in astrology, but it's not. It's the history of how astrology developed into astronomy. So it's looking at cultural night sky, how the night sky informed cultures and how it influenced later developments of the astronomical disciplines. And we just, Gary and I had a little bit of a conversation about this just before you guys joined us. Cultural astronomy, is it interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary? And this has gotten some of us cultural astronomers into some difficulties when working out of universities and institutions, in that they like to try and fit you into one of their departments. But as you will see, it's a little difficult for us to slot into those little neat boxes. So we need to use, obviously, the discipline of astronomy and astrophysics. A lot of us cultural astronomers do have a background in astronomy and astrophysics. Then you've got sociology and anthropology. Biology and animal behaviour. You'll see later on how this plays out with Aboriginal astronomy. Then we've got geology and geomorphology. That's a topic I will be focusing on for the next talk on the 3rd of July. So I'm going to delve into landscapes and how they were used in Aboriginal astronomy. They got surveying and GIS. Bob knows a bit about this one. We do use this. So we use programs such as Horizon for some of our survey work. Linguistics, always good to learn the words associated with astronomical objects in the night sky, the animals that are associated with the night sky, etc. So that's very important to us. Then, of course, we've got mythology and world beliefs. And then, of course, history and computing and IT. So we sort of have to, as part of our discipline, have a good sort of understanding of most of these disciplines. So, yeah, as you can see, it's, we're a little difficult to be slotted into any particular university department because we like to jump across from one discipline to another. Causes all sorts of headaches for a lot of universities. So anyway, archaeoastronomy, basically this discipline, as I mentioned before, you guys would be more familiar with archaeoastronomy in the Northern Hemisphere. A lot of, I suppose you can call it old world cultural astronomy. So it's the astronomy of ancient civilizations that are no longer with us. Now in Australia, up until recently, we didn't do too much archaeoastronomy. What we did focus on here, and we still do, is ethnoastronomy. This is the astronomy of living cultures. And of course, we've got a continuous living culture here in Australia amongst the Aboriginal peoples. And the way that we do things in ethnoastronomy is a little different to archaeoastronomy. We basically we sit down and we yarn with the people, the Aboriginal peoples, about their knowledge of the night sky. That knowledge is recorded. Occasionally, most often, a lot of the records that we of Aboriginal astronomy are actually found in a lot of the archives, because the first records of Aboriginal Australians' knowledge of the night sky were recorded by anthropologists back in the 1800s, 1900s. And it's a matter of sifting through those to pull out all the astronomical information that's embedded in those papers. And more often than not, a lot of the information that's in those papers were missed by the anthropologists that were recording that data, because many anthropologists at the time didn't have a background in astronomy and astrophysics, so we're unaware of some of the significant astronomical events. So yeah, a lot of the current research that we do is actually delving back into those earlier records and extracting that knowledge by basically looking at it from a different perspective, from an astronomer rather than from an anthropologist. So, okay, this is quite important to understand. I did briefly mentioned it before, is to understand that Aboriginal Australia is not uniform across the country. There is not one single Aboriginal Australian culture. There are over 250 different language groups. Each one has to be treated separately when you're doing Aboriginal astronomy. There are themes running across the country that are common to all cultures, or most of them, most of the language groups. Certain astronomies do link up with along song lines, and Bob will introduce that topic when he does his talk on the 10th. So my area of research is basically focused in this area here. And if we zoom in, this is the different the language groups in the southeast, in the Riverina area of southeast Australia. My main focus is in Wiradjuri astronomy, and as you can see, it's that large area in the centre. The Wiradjuri country is one of the largest countries in Australia. So it's the second largest overall in Australia and the largest in New South Wales. It takes up a huge part of the country. It's bigger than some European countries. Then we've got just to the north, we've got Kamilaroi, another language group up there, and which Bob has done quite a bit of research into. And hiding amongst here, one of the other language groups that I will mention is the Wurgaya peoples right here. Okay, so they're the main groups that I'll be presenting the stories of the night sky and how the different stars were used as a calendar. So before we get into it, I just want to do a little bit of a refresher here, because I'll be talking a little bit about aspects in how the stars move through the night sky and how they're used, the positions are used as the indicator for the different life cycles of animals. So you probably hear me talk about heliacal rise and heliacal set. So heliacal rise is the first appearance of a particular star or asterism just before sunrise. Then the heliacal set's the opposite on the western horizon. It's the last time you see that star as it sets in the evening. Then you've got the achronical rise and the achronical set. So achronical rise is the first appearance of a star in the eastern horizon just on dusk. As the sun sets, it's the first one the sky gets dark enough, you'll just see that particular star start to appear. Achronical set, self-explanatory, is just the opposite case. It's the last appearance you'll see of that particular star as the sun rises, the sky gets lighter in the morning. Then we've got dawn and dusk meridional crossings. So these are when the star crosses the meridian in either the dawn sky just before sunrise or in the dusk sky just after sunset. So those 6 aspects are very, very important as the indicator positions of these stars. And so we'll go into the first one. The first animal, of course, is probably the most well-known of all of the Aboriginal constellations. It is known across the country. It's one of these that transcend the language groups. So you can find the emu in the sky in most of the Aboriginal language groups. What we have here, of course, is the Milky Way. And it's the dark bands in the Milky Way which are important. Okay, so up here near the Southern Cross, we have this dark patch here called the coal sack. Some of you are more familiar with it. And down here, you probably won't see much of this from the UK, but we're going further south here. So they've got the 2 pointers, we've got the neck, And this part of the emu you probably will see from the UK because Scorpius is right here. So the ecliptic runs through here, so the sun runs through. So this will be in your sky now. Not quite as high up as we see it in the south, of course, in Australia, but nevertheless, you will see that part of the emu's body. On the right-hand side here, this is a rock carving just on the in the Sydney Basin in the Alvina Track, in the shape of an emu, but it's a particular stretched out emu. The legs sort of, instead of tucking under the bird itself, it's the leg stretches out behind it, and this mirrors the pattern of the emu in the sky with its legs stretched out. And this is a good correspondence. If you see this carving on the ground at the right time of year, you will see the emu directly rising over that rock art. So they are linked. So, and I wanted to show you this one. This is a fantastic photo of the emu rising in the sky over the Blue Mountains. You can see there's probably a quite well-known place just west of Sydney called Katoomba in the Blue Mountains. And these three pillars here are called the Three Sisters. They are actually three of the seven sisters. So there is a link between this landscape and the stars directly. But interestingly enough, I don't know if you can see it, and the reason why I did bring this photo up is just to show you how important the emu is to the Aboriginal people in this region. On the cliff, just in the distance here, you see this little white zigzaggy marking in the cliff there. That is called the emu. And you can see that the emu in the sky is rising directly over this this marking in the cliff face here, and it just shows that the cultural significance of what's on the land and what's in the sky at the same time. Very, very great photo, I must admit. And just to, I'm just going to diverge a little bit here, just to show you how important and how much in the consciousness of Aboriginal people the emu is. Last year, the Royal Australian Mint produced the first one in a 3-coin set, which was the emu in the sky. So non-circulating silver coin. It's done in Wiradjuri style, and you will actually see this patterning later on when we go into Stellarium and a bit sooner in the presentation. There's the artist. This is Scott Source-Towney, who did the emu illustration in the coin there. Scott and I and my wife Tina here collaborate together on producing the constellation artworks that you'll see in this presentation and also in the Stellarium at the program when I put it up later. So yeah, very, very beautiful artworks. He captures the whole thing beautifully, I think. Now, it is part of a 3-coin set, and the other 2 coins, which come out a bit later, we've got the Seven Sisters, and it's produced by an artist from a different language group. This is Christine Collins from the Yamaji people, who did that Seven Sisters coin. So this is a West Australian language group. Again, Seven Sisters, very much like the emu, is an important astronomy that's Australia-wide. It's not just one language group. It's one of those continuum constellations, or asterism in this case. The final coin in the set and we're gonna meet this this shark later. This is a shark in the stars, and this is from the Torres Strait. And that's done by Sigo Pasi, who is a Miriam Mer elder. And interesting enough, when these coins were released, this one took about 2 months to run out of the stock. They're only produced as lots of 5,000. So the 5,000 emus coins sold out in 2 months. This one took 2 weeks. This one took 2 days. It was released, and before any of us could get a copy of it, it already sold out. So we missed out. That's how popular these coins are. So sorry I digressed a little bit there. I just thought it was interesting to show you those, but we'll go back to the emu. This is the part where the constellation is used as a resource calendar. So around about April, May, just gone, the first appearance of the emu indicates that the emus are pairing up. So the females chase the males running around, ready to mate. Around about June, when the emu in the sky is practically horizontal, indicates that the emus are nesting. And unlike many other birds, the male looks after the eggs in the nest. So he sits on the eggs and raises the chicks. So when you see the emu horizontal in the sky, that indicates to the Aboriginal peoples that the nest has eggs in it. And what they used to do is remove only enough eggs for their needs. So they always leave enough eggs for the next generation of chicks. So it's very, very important to preserve the species, and they never over harvest it. They only take what they need at the time. They leave enough for the next generation. Now, the lower one is a bit later in the year. This is July, when you see the emu starting to tip down, head down to the ground. That's an indication that it's now too late to actually go out and hunt for the emu eggs, because the eggs already have chicks in them, and they'd rather leave them alone and let them hatch and produce the next generation. So, yeah. So that's how that's used, the position of the emu in the sky. This is all taken at sunset, by the way. So, so on dusk, when the stars just become visible. So, April, May, June, July, after sunset is the indicator. Finally, just to show how important culturally the constellation is, in about August, September, sort of mid-August-ish, the head of the emu points almost directly downwards towards the horizon. That is an indicator of the time that is right to start preparing for Bora ceremony. And according to some of the Southeast Aboriginal traditions, so that's the Wiradjuri, the Kamilaroi Uralgay, and if there are other neighbouring language groups, they see the emu as 2 circles connected by an avenue or a line. So the big avenue, the big circle is the body of the emu, and the small circle is the head of the emu. So on the ground, they prepare a Bora site or initiation site to mirror that emu in the sky. They construct a large circle, and that's the public space. So men, women, children, non-initiates are more than welcome to be in that space. However, off to the side, in the direction of where the emu is setting, they construct a smaller circle, which is the private, secret, sacred space where the initiations take place. So there's an extra level of importance of the emu in the sky as an indicator of the time of year and the time for ceremony. Very important ceremony in this case. Right, now going into a different language group, this is the Wurgaya peoples of the Mallee region in northern Victoria. Now they see the star Vega as Nearloan. Nearloan is the Mallee hen. And to the Wurgaya people of northern Victoria, the star Vega in the western constellation of Lyra, the Ha, is Nearloan, the Mallee fowl. The star's first appearance in the east after sunset or chronicle rise in late winter, early spring coincides with the males preparing their nest for the breeding season. The females start to lay eggs around the time Vega crosses the meridian at sunset, which is what is illustrated there. And this is in September, and this is when Nearloan reaches its highest elevation in the sky. Okay, so the first chicks of the season start to hatch in November, coinciding with the last appearance of Vega in the northwestern sky after sunset, or it's basically its heliacal set. So that's one resource calendar that is noted by the Wurgaya people. Also from the Wurgaya people, we have another star, Arcturus, which is Marpiankirk, and there's an interesting dreaming attached to this one. It's one of my favorite ones. So the important dreaming associated with this star is in the western constellation of Boötes, the herdsman. The dreaming tells of a time long ago when the people were suffering under a big drought. Marpiankirk wandered away from the camp to die in peace. While awaiting the inevitable, she noticed a trail of ants disappearing down a hole. She dug down to uncover an ant's nest full of larvae, which in their language is called bitter, an important high-protein food source. She started eating the bitter and noticed her strength returning. By showing other members of her family how to find more bitter, she ensured their survival. To commemorate the deed, she was placed in the sky on her passing to become the star we know as Arcturus. But to the Wurgaya, it was always Marpiankirk, the wise woman star. Its dusk meridian crossing in August served as a reminder to her people of her deed and tells them the time of year when the bitter was available as a food source. The orange hue of Arcturus also mimics the colour of the species of ant from that particular region of northern Victoria. So again, it's a great dreaming and a great way of informing the people of knowing when it's time to harvest those ant larvae. So yes, watching Arcturus crossing the meridian is their indicator in this case. So yep. Next one. Here's a good one. This again at Seven Sisters. There are many Seven Sisters dreamings that cross the country.
Do you need another refill?
Yes, thanks. I'm getting dry. She's going to make me another drink. Thanks, Tim. So I'll only give you two examples for how the Seven Sisters or the Pleiades were used in Aboriginal traditions, astronomical traditions. The first one is from the east coast of Australia, where the heliacal rising of the Seven Sisters in mid-June into July coincides with the northerly migration of the whales from Antarctica to the breeding grounds in North New South Wales, southern Queensland. So seeing the Haleiwa rise in the morning sky just before sunrise in June, the Aboriginal people knew from that the knew that the whales were on their way from Antarctica. So also later on, about 3 months later, a chronicle set of the Seven Sisters was the indicator that the whales were then turning around from their breeding grounds and heading back south to the cooler Antarctic waters with new calves in tow, sometimes with killer whales in pursuit. So the killer whales and the humpback whales sort of follow each other up and down the coast, but their migration is timed almost exactly to the appearance and disappearance of the Seven Sisters. We go to the central desert regions. The Haleiwa rise again indicated to the desert peoples that the dingoes were breeding and had pups in the dens. The dingo pups were often taken as pets. Occasionally, in times of hardship and drought, dingoes were used as a food resource. So, so again, it's another good example of stars being used as an indicator for what's happening on the land. So now a couple from my country, so to speak, where I'm living, Wiradjuri country here in central New South Wales. We have a wonderful constellation in Scorpius. The stars of Scorpius forms the constellation of Gugar, which is the Wiradjuri word for the tree goanna. And when it first appears in the sky and rises towards the meridian, this is from about April, May to September, October, when it's rising and crossing the meridian. That was used as an indicator to inform that the lizards, the goanna, were going into winter torpor. They're very thin, very skinny, and not worth hunting at that time of year. However, after it crosses the meridian and faces downwards, that signified that it was climbing the celestial tree back down to Earth, and indicated to the people that the terrestrial equivalents had just feasted on eggs and chicks in the nests in the trees, and they were coming down onto the ground or fattened for summer. And around about October, November, that was the time that they would go out and hunt the tree goannas, the gugar, because it was now full of nutritious fat. There's valuable medicinal fat in the gugar that was appreciated by many. So, yep, there's another example. The stars and Scorpius in this case. Antares was used to mark where the heart of the gugar was, but the overall patterns of the stars in the whole constellation of Scorpius was seen as the goanna, the gugar. And another one, this is probably the most complicated of all the ones here, and I wanted to sort of go through this slowly. My wife's indicating I need to take a drink. I'm drying out.
I can hear you dry. You start getting sticky sounding.
Thank you. So this is Malian. Malian is the wedge-tailed eagle. Absolutely beautiful bird. One of the largest, if not the largest eagle in the world, I think it is. And this is associated with 3 stars and a constellation that you're probably familiar with. This is the 3 stars are Arcturus, Vega, and Altair. And it's a progression of the constellations in this region of sky. So I'll just show you the first one. So in late April, we have the first appearance of, so this is the acronical rise of Arcturus. And Arcturus represents the one of the 2 wives, eagle wives of Malian the eagle. This indicates the start of the eagle, the wedge-tailed eagle breeding cycle, and the breeding cycle runs from about April to November with a peak in July. Sorry, so that first appearance basically denotes the start of that particular breeding cycle. And as we go a bit later into the year, so this is now mid-July. We've had the meridian crossing of Arcturus and the appearance of the eagle's nest, which is made up of the stars of Corona Borealis, the northern crown. So that U-shaped constellation is seen as the shape of the eagle's nest. So this marks the peak in the breeding cycle, and also the constellation of Malian proper, which is just over here on the right-hand side, starts to rise too, and it's marked by the star Altair in Aquila. Funny enough, it's one of those constellations which mirror the northern hemisphere constellations. So they saw an eagle in those stars as the western eagle is seen in the northern hemisphere. So very, very interesting, and it's not the only example. And if we go through the year a bit more, now that we've got the eagle's nest crossing the meridian, we have the second eagle wife rising, and Malian himself rises a little bit higher. So this is in August. So we're passing the peak. We've just passed, 2 to 3 weeks past the peak of the breeding cycle. The appearance of the eagle's nest crossing the meridian is a good indicator that the nests now have eggs in them, are about to hatch. And if we go through again to the next one, now Altair across the meridian. The second eagle wife has also passed into the western sky. This is in October. And also, if you note, the eagle nest is starting to disappear. This is an indicator that most of the eggs have hatched. The chicks in the nest are fledged and are about to leave the nest. And finally, to mark the end of the breeding cycle in November, the second eagle wife's just about to disappear. You can't see the star anymore. And the eagle proper, which is Malian, the male eagle, is slowly starting to disappear into the western sky on dusk. So that's their indicator that that cycle is now pretty much complete. So we're going from April to November. The appearance and disappearance of subsequent of those constellations associated with the eagle will inform the Wiradjuri people of what stage in that life cycle the eagles are in. So very, very important and very, very interesting one, where it's a composite of more than one constellation, one star. It's almost like a family grouping of constellations that indicate the what's going on. And to finish up, I've got an example from the Torres Strait, which is Basim the shark. Basim or Badum, depending on the language group in the Torres Strait, because there are a couple of different language groups up there. This is made up of the stars in the Big Dipper, and I don't know if some of you find it surprising that we can see the Big Dipper. I think Greg Space Gandalf, very quick, in the last presentation did mention that from Broome he was able to see quite clearly the Big Dipper in the sky. When Tina and I worked at Uluru some years back, we also were able to see the Big Dipper, usually in the sky in sort of July, August especially. Just very, very briefly popped up and popped back down again. So yes, we can see some of those northern hemisphere stars up in the Torres Strait quite easily. They're close to the equator. They can see quite a lot of the northern hemisphere sky. Now the stars making up the Big Dipper informed the people of Torres Strait several different things. First of all, that the sharks were breeding, hence the connection with sharks. Therefore, it was dangerous to be in the water at the time. They are always very, very cautious this time of year. Also, it was indicated that the monsoons were about to come, and they started planting certain crops like sugarcane and yams, etc., etc. So again, there's that resource element. So it's the breeding cycle of the shark itself, and then also a predictor of weather changes about to come for planting and food resources. So what's happening at the moment in a lot of language groups is they putting together these seasonal resource calendars. They're designed so that they can go on the wall at various schools and community centres. And they used to sort of put all of that information together in one chart that you could follow through the year. Now, at the moment, a lot of these charts that you probably come across have a lot of information of animals and plants and the seasonal changes, the name of the season, etc., etc. But not many of them at the moment have the seasonal stars incorporated into those. And that's something that we're just in the process of working on at the moment to try and incorporate seasonal stars and seasonal astronomical elements into these calendars. So very, very important tool. A lot of information can be portrayed in these resource calendars. So what we're going to do now, how's it going for time? Yep, I think I'm going to finish in time. Gary. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to take you to Stellarium and just show you a couple of Aboriginal night skies. So if I just, hopefully this works, I'm going to stop the sharing there and go back and share my other screen. So let me just escape from that one. Pushing different buttons. Here we go. Hang on.
That looks right.
No, doesn't look right, does it? No.
Managing okay, Trevor?
That's right. I've just got to escape from the presentation. There we go. Now it looks right. There we go. Got you back again. And I've just got to share the other screen now. There we go. Hopefully this works. How's that? We're back? Okay, good. On a learning curve here. So, yeah, what I'm going to do to finish up here is just take you through some of the different Aboriginal night skies that can be shown in Stellarium. How many of you have actually heard of Stellarium or use it? Quite a few? Yeah, looks like there's a few there. Okay, now Stellarium is a great program, because it's open source, you can actually add your own content to it. And this is what we've been doing. Bob and I have been working on a couple of different add-ins for the program. So being a digital planetarium, it shows a very realistic portrayal of the night sky. And I'll just show you this first. This is, if you go into this option here, just to show you where it is. If you go into Star Law, you will see that there is a selection of different cultural night skies. Some of these you won't see when you download it, because these are actually mine that I'm working on. So, but we do have 2 Aboriginal night skies that are now default cultural skies. And I'll show you those later. But first of all, I'll show you the one I'm currently working on, which is the Wiradjuri night sky. Just to show you how these the constellations are sort of displayed across the sky. Now, it's incomplete, by the way. It's still a work in progress. We've currently got 13 constellations up there, and I think we probably could find another half dozen or a dozen that need to go up there sometime once we've confirmed certain things. But you can see here, the emu in the sky is just sort of a bit more transparent in some of the other constellations, because there are other constellations that sort of overlay them. Like we've got the Gugar here. Actually, I'll call up the label so you can see which is which. So we've got the Gugar overlaid the back of the emu.
Zoom in a fraction.
Yeah. Just, there we go. There we go. The Southern Cross in the Wiradjuri tradition is the Yarrandu, the Yarran tree. And there's an important dreaming linked to that particular constellation. But in the branches of the Yarran tree rest the 2 cockatoos, sulphur-crested cockatoos, which are the 2 pointers, Alpha and Beta Centauri. They are connected and associated with this constellation as well. Down here, this is Corona Australis, and it is the Googaburra, or the Kookaburra. Over here, we've got Canopus, which is Wagon the Crow. And over here, opposite where the emu is, in the other dark band that snakes through the other side of the Milky Way, yes, snakes through, hint, hint, is the rainbow serpent, or the Wawi in the Wiradjuri language. Now, what I want to do is I'm just going to fast forward, because I want to show you other constellations that are sort of just off the screen here. So just make it rotate nice and slow for you. I'm just going to the eastern horizon. So there we have the Eagles rising. There's one constellation in particular I wanted to show you, and it's been the focus of one of my recent papers, and it may surprise some of you in the Northern Hemisphere, because you'll recognize this constellation when it comes up. And it won't be too far away now. Here it comes. Okay. I'm going to get rid of the daytime sky. Thank you. I've got my backseat driver here.
Yeah.
I'll stop it there. So I'll just get rid of the atmosphere as you suggest. Here is Miami, the great creator. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it more clearly. This, you probably recognize it as Orion. Now, in the Wiradjuri tradition, Orion, the stars of Orion make up the shape of Miami, a very important creator being in Wiradjuri tradition. It's interesting that he's in the same orientation as you would see it in the Northern Hemisphere, i.e. he's upside down in the southern sky, which is very, very interesting. because of the symmetrical nature of the stars of Orion, he could have been positioned the other way up, so he's upright just as easily as he's portrayed here. But that is the orientation that seems to fit some of the dreamings, and I did a paper on it just explaining why it's most likely in that orientation. However, I am working on a follow-up paper which suggests it could also be seen under certain circumstances, and depending on the dreaming, the other way around. So yes, you can sort of do all this research and you come up with a conclusion, and then suddenly you find a couple of examples that don't quite fit that way. So, but I think it's particular to a particular dreaming. It's a dreaming specific and location specific. Also very, very similar to Northern Hemisphere traditions, if I zoom in, is the Seven Sisters of the Pleiades, which in Wiradjuri is the Balandiang, or Dindima is another alternative name for it. And funny enough, in Orange, we have a winery called Dindima Wines, and they named it after the stars. So that's one Aboriginal sky. This is the Wiradjuri sky.
It's a representation of same.
Yep, and there's some gaps to fill. Tina and I are actually trying to find the locations of other constellations, which fill in some of the other spaces here. We know they're there. We just got to confirm it with elders and a bit more digging and a bit more research to verify. So moving on to another night sky, another Aboriginal night sky. Just got to zippy through these. Where is it? Kamilaroi. Hopefully I'll call up the right one. I think this is the right one. Hey, Bob. Now this is work that Bob did for his Masters some years back. So here's another night sky. Just moving around. So the Bure, the three naughty boys, shall we say, Bob, that chase after the Seven Sisters, the Mie of the Pleiades there. And this old fella here is stopping the advance of these three guys for the Seven Sisters. So again, there's a similar theme running through this that you're probably familiar with the Orion and Seven Sisters stories from the Northern traditions. I might just run it through. Hang on, there's a few more constellations that are hidden. There are, like I was saying before, there are similarities and some differences between language groups. Now, because the Kamilaroi Uraliae are very, very close to Wiradjuri country, some of their constellations do match up. So we've got the two cockatoos again as the two pointer stars. And we've got the emu in the sky here too. So very, very similar. The two Magellanic clouds are seen as two elders that help and assist the movement of the spirit of people who pass on, so that they can come back if they are initiated or are not initiated. They go to the sky world proper through this part of the sky here near the emu's head, seen as a gateway to the other world for their traditions. Otherwise, they will guide non-initiated people back to Earth, basically, to be reincarnated. So that's the Kamilaroi Uraliae night sky. That is part of the package. When you download it, that is installed in the package. And the second one is the Boron, which is the Wurgaya people of northwest Victoria. So there's their night sky. Again, they have an emu. They have two. The two pointers are two boys, hunting. I think they're hunting the possum in the, which is where the in the Wiradjuri one was the tree in the Southern Cross. So yes, by all means, when you're playing with Stellarium, download these. Have a look at the two Aboriginal night skies that are currently installed, and hopefully in the future, and it's one project that we're trying to complete, and that is I hope to get the Wiradjuri night sky installed sometime soon. A lot of work.
The source images will remain copyrighted,
yes,
but the actual content will be approved, and you will be able to at least look at it as a composite image instead.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in a second? Trevor, can I jump in a second?
Yeah, you can jump in. Yeah, you might.
The Kamilaroi Ualia is not available straight off the Stellarium download because of an intellectual property issue.
Oh, it's changed. I think
You
it was about
actually
in the earlier versions.
are going to have to ask for it and agree to a intellectual property thing, but that should be sorted out pretty soon.
Yes, and this is one of the difficulties we have with this, because there is an intellectual property component of what we're doing.
And we have our cultural advisors.
Yes, we have to get the approval of elders before we can, utilize those images in Stellarium. So it's a process we're working through. Hopefully, it'll be worked through whilst we're still researching the other constellations that need to be added to our Wiradjuri package anyway. But Bob went through a similar process with the Kamilaroi Ualia Aboriginal night sky. So yes, a bit more complex when you have a living culture versus a not so living culture. where there's very little intellectual property rights other than the original artists. When it comes to an Aboriginal astronomy, you've got you've got to negotiate and work with an artist, you've got to work with communities, you've got to work with the community elders, and the process is just a little bit more complicated.
And academia.
That's the other. It's always funny with academia. Anyway, so thank you very much, guys. I think I'm on time. Yep, look at that. I finished.
Oh, don't worry about time, Trevor. That was fascinating. Really enjoyed the Stellarium demo.
I don't know if you can see it. That's an emu egg. If you ever wanted to see
yeah.
Okay, so there's about a dozen chook eggs in one of those.
About 600 mils.
Yep. So
that is substantial.
Very, very, and very nice too. Of all the eggs that we've tried, I think the emu is as close to a chook egg in flavour as anything. So,
any questions for Trevor? Anyone? Just unmute if you have a question. Kevin Hunt, did you have one there?
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. That was a fascinating talk. And
thank you.
I just wondered how you've got the different Aboriginal countries, and they've all developed their own sort of, star lore or astronomy. How did they record that and pass it on? I saw there was a few rock paintings and things, but was it just by word of mouth, or was it by
a lot of oral transmission? Yeah, oral transmission. A lot of the ceremonies will involve a lot of memorizing of songs and chants that are used as memory aids. So a lot of information can actually be passed along using that method. And of course, they did do sand paintings and and other things to communicate and exchange knowledge and ideas.
Yeah. I
But
suppose as well, as you explained, they associated the constellation position with a certain acts as well, like hunting for, I can't remember what that tree iguana was called, but or hunting for the eggs. So I suppose it was passed down through practice as well as words.
Yeah. Also, there's something else we've got to remember too, is that the links to the breeding cycles using the stars as indicators of those seasonal cycles. If you allow for precession, you can probably say that the current use of those seasonal stars is probably no more than 2,000 years old, because any later than that, going back in time, those stars would not coincide with those breeding cycles, and they'd have to use a different set of stars, obviously. So that's something to consider, is that they would have to revise those.
It'd be like writing a new edition every procession.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. So every 2,000 years, they would have to change the stars to match the animals.
Yeah, I suppose that changed in slow time, didn't it? So they start to notice that it was not quite the same, I suppose.
Yep. Yeah.
No, thanks. That was excellent. Thank you very much.
I love that the Greek constellations we know, I mean, they do go back a little bit further. They're like 2,500 years old. That's just like the date of the last revision in the Aboriginal system.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last time they just, looked at it again.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So I guess one of the many values of working with the Australian Aboriginal cultures is that they're a living culture that goes back a long time with a memory.
Yeah. So we've got examples of recording events from about 10,000 years ago, accurately. There's work to suggest that they can go back at least as far as the last ice age for certain events that are recorded in observations that only match the time period of about 10,000 years ago. So, recording sea level rise when Tasmania was cut off from the mainland, etc. They're all encoded in different dreamings.
The development of the Great Australia Bite's another one.
Yeah.
As it travelled further inland.
Yeah. Taxi driver here.
Would you mind explaining the term dream to people who haven't heard it before? Yeah, could you explain the term dreaming to people who haven't heard it before, please, Trevor?
Oh, okay. You probably heard the term dream time, but we try and refrain from using that terminology because dream time suggests it happened in the deep past. Whereas a lot of Aboriginal people will say that dreaming hasn't stopped; it's still ongoing. It's a very hard concept, isn't it, Bob?
I can throw in one word.
Yes.
Not creatism.
No.
Aboriginal woman here.
Aboriginal Tina here.
One of the anthropologists didn't coin, but he used the word dreaming. That was Stanner, and he actually said that the dreaming means every win, W-H-E-N. Just think about that.
Every win. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's
if you understand the concept of singing up country or dancing up country and what rituals are about, ceremony is about reenacting dream time events. It's about connecting the past, the present, and the future. It's about actively engaging with elders who have passed, the spirits of the land.
Yep.
So dream time, as Trevor said, it's not a point somewhere distant in the past. It's a point of time, but it's linked to all points of time.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those concepts. It's hard to explain. You need to experience it rather than try and intellectualize it.
Yeah, I guess if you try and perceive it from a model of time that goes forwards and backwards, then what's gone has happened and doesn't exist anymore.
It's
And
not a
what
very
hasn't
Or
linear
timeless.
concept. It's
Or
not
yeah,
timeless.
exactly. It's
not a
stepping
linear
outside.
Yeah, yeah. It's things occurring simultaneously across time. You know, if there's no time point, it's happening all the time.
Yeah, I guess it's the progression of the events that made the land what it is today. The land and the sky and people, it's a progression. That's why it's better to use the term dreaming time and not, dreaming and not dreaming dream time. It's a progression. It's a representation of everything that happens happened and still happens in the planet.
Possibly the simplest way to explain is if you say dream time is seen as the creation time, and you understand that creation is a process that's still ongoing, then dream time easily fits in when something was first created, that constant act of creation and recreation that's always ongoing. So all the seasonal cycles that we go through, that kind of act of creation is ongoing, it's cyclical. So it's not a linear concept of time. So if you, in its most simplest sense, you could simply say it's the act of creation and recreation, ongoing creation. So it's a constant.
Yeah, and also from what I've been reading, it's also a very political concept, because it's when we say dreaming, it means that the Aboriginal culture is still alive and very much alive and strong. And so it's a political term as well, if you can see it like that as well.
Cultures and a representative of a living culture, I can certainly say that having worked in tourism, for example, at Uluru, one of the things we had to overcome in terms of tourist awareness was that as a living culture, these people, an expression of stories, this story may still be authentic. It's no less authentic if it's told using a digital medium or on canvas, as opposed to body art or ground art or painting on bark with ochre. The story still has its integrity, but the medium might change. And so as an expression of cultural continuity, the stories are still alive. How we express them may change. And when you talk about precession of equinoxes, so, we're saying, you update the encyclopedia every couple of thousand years or so. So in terms of a living culture that's been in practice for many thousands of years, so we've updated the encyclopedia a number of times. So in that kind of context, you're basically saying if something happens like a meteorite impact or a star goes supernova, all those events get incorporated at the time into story. Now, the alignments and things may shift every few thousands of years, but the knowledge about the event is still recorded somewhere, somehow. So we do have that sort of updating process, which is why some stories, and Dr. Dwayne Hummaker is one of the ones who's doing some work on Tasmanian astronomy, it's kind of like looking at that historic record and saying, well, how old is this story based on when this alignment was in effect? So we're basically able to sort of, to an extent, back calculate certain things. So things that happened geologically might pertain to a story, and we can date that.
Yeah.
It seems to me that model of time is probably closer to theoretical physics as model of the universe than our model of time is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's another way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Tina. That was a great.
Sometimes it's a difficult concept to explain. You have to experience it, and not everyone can experience that unless they go into a particular state of mind.
Yeah. If you haven't been brought up in it as your model of the world, it's difficult to try it on temporarily.
This way of thinking was probably common about 2,000 years ago across most of the world, through all tribal cultures.
We just messed it up.
Yeah. we started working on the clock, you know.
Started thinking a bit.
9 to 5.
Yeah, left brain thinking and dominance has.
It's a very linear way of thinking about it.
Were there any more questions for Trevor?
Have we confused everyone? That's good.
You enjoyed that? Yeah, I'm seeing lots of smiles and nods of heads, and that's good for me. Kevin, did you have something else to say before we finish?
I was just going to say, thinking about what's just been said there, it seems like it's almost like the dreaming is like the physical act of remembering and creating at the same time.
That's not a bad way to describe it.
Yeah, that's good. Yep.
And why not? That seems reasonable to me.
Yep.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
No worries.
And thanks, Carla. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Tina. And most of all, thank you, Trevor. A very enjoyable session.
Pleasure. Very good. Very good talking to everyone. Yep. So we'll continue the discussions at the next one on the third.
Third, absolutely.
Start looking at landscapes in astronomy then.
Excellent stuff. Looking forward to it very much.
Okay. No
Bye for
worries.
now.
Thank you.
Okay.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.